It was a transformation because I didn't have sanity. All these lies. I believed I was a product of my environment. And it was like, you're not a product of your environment. This is the sum of your decisions. I was like, oh shit. That's not what a man is. These different facts started being revealed to me. And I started like tripping, like, oh, I am freaking tripping. It was as if the shades had been removed from my eyes, and I started seeing clearly.
Welcome to Into Action, brought to you by Touchstone Recovery Center. This month, I've brought on 3 of our staff members. I thought it would be valuable to have different outlooks and like different opinions on how to stay sober, what got them sober, and just different interpretations on step 2. If you watched last month, I met with Jim Horton. We talked a little bit about step 1 and what that meant from him, for him from a family's perspective. I know for me, the steps have played a big part in my recovery, and other people not so much, but I really think that there's value in the steps, no matter if you just go through them one time, whether you're in recovery or not. Like the steps they teach us to live a better life and to like be a better version of ourselves. So this month we're gonna go over step 2. First, I wanna introduce my 3 guests. First, why don't you introduce yourself? What do you do for Touchstone, and what's your name? You go first, sir.
Hello, my name is Louis Edwards, and I am Director of Client Care here.
My name is Brandy. I'm a case manager here.
And my name is Kenny, and I work in admissions.
So you guys probably remember, if you watched last season, 2 of these gentlemen have been on the show before and like gave in-depth versions of their recovery stories and their journey. It's first time for Brandy. Welcome.
Thank you.
I just why don't we start by asking what got you what got you clean and sober, and how do you maintain your sobriety today? Why don't you start, Kenny?
So what got me clean and sober is a relentless effort to keep trying for myself. Just my life was unmanageable. Lost careers, relationships, pretty much everything, and ended up becoming homeless at one point. So just trying to get at the beginning, trying to get back, a relationship with my family, especially my kids. That's what kept me going, kept me trying. But ultimately, going to treatment, and like you said in the intro, working the steps.
Yeah.
And continue for myself is to continue to work the steps. I shared a lot in the past. I was always in a program when I started recovery. Today, I can say that I work a program. So, continuous work on myself.
I know your story, but like, how long was that journey for you? Like from the day that you decided, maybe I need to change my life, till you got sober? Because I know for me, it was a decade at least. So I think that's valuable for people to know that you don't have to do it your first time. Most of us don't.
Yeah, so for me, I got into the treatment January of 2019, and then my sobriety date is May 27th, 2022.
Okay.
So it took a good 3 years of trying.
Yeah. So Brandy, what got you into your recovery? What keeps you clean and sober today?
What keeps me clean and sober today is maintenance on my spiritual health, primarily, which is my connection with the higher power, which I refer to as God. A continuous weekly meeting with my sponsor, working the steps rigorously and honestly. It's been 12 years of in and out of rehabs, in and out of the rooms of AA, NA, etc. And it wasn't until I woke up one day and I genuinely said, I am tired. I am genuinely tired. I'm not going to live this life, and I'm not going to repeat some of the same patterns that had occurred in my life. I wasn't going to lose my daughter, wasn't going to lose my family, and I reached out for help. And it was that persistence that I would continuously try and never give up on myself that kept me coming back and coming back. And I always tell people, it isn't how many times you fall or how long it takes you to get there. It's the fact that you got up on that last time and you continue to try. And as a result, I'm sitting here today, clean and sober.
Thank you. Lewis, what keeps you clean and sober?
You know my story. I've been on here before, so without going into, retelling that story again, my issue was a lot more complex and multifaceted than just substance use, because I was a gang member and had found and a career criminal. So my addiction was it was much more complex and multifaceted. I was addicted to gangbanging and a criminal lifestyle too. Just my whole point of reference was messed up. I believed a lot of just lies and half truths that was passed on to me by other people that didn't know any better either. Like, for example, my definition of a man was that a man don't take no stuff from nobody. That he'll go and rob and kill for his family, and that's just a warped. A man will do what he needs to do. Will turn the other cheek. Will do nothing to get taken away from his family and put in prison for all that time, because you're useless then. So the short answer, Nolan, is prison. Prison changed my life. Pain, suffering, and loss. I can look back now and see that there was jewels in that suffering and then that pain, and through that pain, I was able to first tear myself down just to be in Lewis again. Before I turned into Snoop, before I turned into these alter egos, because I wasn't comfortable with who I was. I just had to start with being Lewis again and build on that, and I consistently build on that, and I stay sober by doing a daily, not just daily though, but constantly evaluating my behaviors to make sure they line up with my goals and those things that are important to me. Sure. And addiction just doesn't fit in my life anymore. My appetites have changed. It's been a while now, and I'm older than everybody here, so my appetites are changed. I think it's a little bit of maturity that happened too. So yeah, I hope that answered the question.
It did. So as far as like step 2 is concerned, so we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. I think the first time that I went through the steps, I wasn't really dedicated to my sobriety. I was working with a sponsor, trying to appear as if I was sober. Wasn't really trying to stop using or drinking forever, just maybe to get out of the trouble I was in at the time. And over time I started thinking about, that saying that there's no atheists in foxholes. So every time I got myself in a drunk tank, or when I got locked up in prison, or when I owed somebody a bunch of money, or my car was going to get repossessed, that's when I would pray. That was the only time I'd pray, was to get myself out of trouble. And then when I finally got sober and I started working the steps, I realized that's the opposite of what I should be doing. I know now I pray and say thank you, basically, is all I'm doing. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just trying to be grateful for the life that my higher power has provided for me, and the sobriety that I've achieved to this point with his help. So I guess my point is, my view of a higher power has changed drastically over time. And kind of like what you were just saying, when I was running amok and doing shit that I knew I shouldn't be doing, my views, my spirituality, I almost used it to justify my actions, right? Because if I believe in something greater than myself, and if I believe like in right and wrong and morals, I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. So my answer to that was like to totally deny that there was any type of higher power. You know, this was all a fluke. We're here and then we die and that's it. Because to believe anything else means like I have to change my behavior, you know. Anyway, so Brandy, when you did step 2 for the first time, well, why don't you tell me about that experience? Like, what is your relationship with step 2?
So I have done a couple of step 2s, and I can say that I didn't discover higher power until I was about 30 years old in AA. That was my experience when I finally believed that there was a power greater than myself. It was the only explanation I had at that time as to how I had even made it that far in life, given what I had experienced. And in working step 2, I began to pray after about the age of 30 and closer to where I am now. The last couple of years, I really began to start praying. I didn't know what that higher power looked like. I couldn't define it, but I knew it existed. And I didn't know what it was to truly experience the connection with a higher power until I began to pray. And I began to pray out of a great sense of fear. And every time I got in my car every day to work, I had this tremendous fear of driving, and that's how I began praying. And I prayed to have that fear relieved from me. And slowly but surely, over time, one day I discovered I no longer possessed that fear, and it caught me by surprise. And I was deathly afraid to drive. And it was little miracles like that started to happen in my life. And I started to pray for other people. I started to pray for my higher power to take away my difficulties, my worries, all of my fears. And I started noticing little blessings in my life. And sooner or later, I began to have this sense of peace about myself that I could not explain. And for me, it wasn't just about that sense of peace, but it was also about restoring me to sanity. And it took a while for me to grasp a clear understanding that the sanity meant my thought processes. It meant that it was well beyond just addiction. It was about the way in which I perceived the world, the way I perceived other people. It was about my behaviors as a result of the way in which I perceived my external environment. And it was in that not only was I able to change my behaviors, but change my thoughts. And I truly do believe today that God has done for me what I couldn't do for myself.
Yeah. So Lewis, although he has more sobriety than I do, like he didn't get sober through AA or NA or working with a sponsor. He has, his own path to recovery that works for him, which I know that it's not a one size fits all, solution. And sitting right next to me is living proof of that. But I know you've gone through the steps and you have spirituality in your life. So what do you think of when you work the steps? How did step 2 affect you?
I've never deliberately or intentionally went through the steps.
Okay.
I've never sat with anyone and did the steps. But I did the steps without even realizing I was doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
I can look at the steps and look at my time in incarceration and me going through all of those things as it pertains to, the second step. I told the story before how I was sentenced to 14 years. 3 years later, the detectives came to the prison and they asked me about, some more crimes. And I ended up getting 4 more years and 4 more months for a total of 18 years and 4 months. But when they came to the prison and asked me about this, and I denied it, and I went back to my cell, I got on my knees, and my knees wasn't low enough, and I laid flat out on my face on my cell, and I just moaned. I couldn't even put the prayer into words. A couple weeks before this actually happened, I went to this program, Kairos. These Christian men come to the prison and they spend 3 days with you, and it really impacted me. And I was like, whoa, I don't want to be Scarface anymore. I want to be one of these guys, just men of integrity. It was just, it blew me away. They were men from all kind of different walks of life, but they were men of integrity that was there selflessly, reaching out to somebody, and it blew me away. So I got on my cell floor, and I made some promises that I would help people that haven't. I know that to be released again, that it's on borrowed time, that I deserve to never leave this place. I meant that prayer that I couldn't even put into words that day over 15 years ago. I mean it to this day still. I mean it to this day still. So you asked me in the last one, so how did it happen, Louis? Did it happen over a matter of time, or did it happen? I mentioned that after I got up off that floor, as Brandy, and I just put it together right now. God, the higher power, or my lack of understanding thereof, started restoring me to sanity. I wasn't sane in the first place, so it wasn't a restoration. Do you understand? It was a
transformation.
It was a transformation, because I didn't have sanity. All these lies. I believed I was a product of my environment, and it was like, you're not a product of your environment. This is the sum of your decisions. I was like, oh shit. That's not what a man is. These different facts started being revealed to me, and I started like tripping, like, oh, I am freaking tripping. It was as if the the shades had been removed from my eyes, and I started seeing clearer. Now I have to say that once that awakening happened, I pursued God. I pursued the understanding. I started delving into first Christianity and just searching for God. And I'll admit that my search has left me more confused than ever. I do not know. I say that to say, I don't know what's going on, but I know something's going on. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
There's no name to it or nothing. I don't ascribe to any one religion, because I was meeting with all these people of different religions, and I say, man, there's good people in all of these places, but to choose one is to say all the rest are wrong, and that doesn't make sense. Why all? I was just really in pursuit, and that pursuit to this day is that I don't know, but I know it's something bigger than me going on that I feel connects us all. And I think I always kind of felt that I was raised as a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So I always kind of like, at once I thought there was a crypt god. Get a load of that. Yeah, I'd pray to the crypt god to keep me safe. And it just struck me, as Brandy said it, that the higher power restored her to sanity. And I was like, whoa, that resonates with me. Though I don't think I was sane in the first place. But as I said, after I got up off that floor, bro, it was like the blinders started falling from my eyes, and I started seeing, life through a different lens,
Sure.
if that makes sense.
Yep.
And it's
it
the
does.
lens I still see through.
Got it. I mean, it sounds like step 2 to me. Like your higher power restored you to sanity, or transformed you to sanity. So that's a version of it. But I guess I think the point of having different viewpoints and different approaches to a recovery program, that's just it. They're all very similar, whether it's through Celebrate Recovery or Refuge Recovery or Smart Recovery or AA and NA, or just whatever you call your path. Like there's similarities to all of them. There's like underlying values to each that are, they're true for all. But thank you.
I agree, Nolan. I believe it's many roads to recover.
Sure.
to say, for me to say, and I say this in group even, for me to say that if you do this, that for me to claim that I have figured out what would work for you, or anybody saying that they figured out what would work for you, I call bullshit on that. We're too unique as individuals for it to be a one-size-fit-all solution.
Shit. And I think what works, what works for me, I'm scared to change it. Like I know what keeps me sober, and why mess with that?
That part.
You know what I mean?
That part.
So
If that's cooking, you know, I always say, if that's baking cookies in the moonlight naked at night, that's what you got to do. You got to do it. But it's your responsibility to figure out what works for you.
yeah,
It's your responsibility to figure out what works for you and then practice that. Sometimes us in the recovery community, though we don't want to be judged for being addicts, we're some judgmental people. And we'll say, you're not doing it right if you're not doing it like I'm doing it.
yeah.
You know? And I fight, you guys act, you all know, because you know me personally, I fight against that. There is many roles to recovery, and it's the client, it's your responsibility to figure out what works for you. I'm gonna throw everything at you. I'm gonna definitely share with you what works for me, and I'm gonna share everything that I've learned through my education and through my experience. But you gotta pick up and find out what works for you, and screw anybody that has something.
You know, we all know what doesn't work, you know, because we're here, and we, at least, you know, the clients that come to Touchstone, they know what doesn't work.
That part.
So stay away from that and try something new.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so Kenny, when you first worked step 2, how did that impact your recovery? And I know it's an ongoing, like, we talk a lot about spirituality, we talk a lot about higher power and living in gratitude, but anyway, please share your experience.
So for me, it's a little different, but similar. I came into the program thinking like I had a head start because I was raised in church. What I learned since then is almost like everything else. I had to forget or relearn that part of my life. And I say that because I never dug in deep enough because I thought I already had it. My first time realizing the power part, I'm a control freak. So to hear that there's a power greater than myself, even though I believe in God, it's still, I didn't know where that power, like where do I come into play? And I thought that I had a big role of it, right? But from a personal standpoint, thinking I have to do these things to get the results I want. What I learned, I was doing NA. I was working a program at NA, and in that literature, and don't quote me on it, but it talks about drugs being a power greater than you in a negative way. And when I read that, I was like, wow, look at my life. I'm in treatment. I can't stop using drugs on my own. I have to go to treatment. I have to get myself in a safe environment. So if drugs are if a negative power greater than myself, then there has to be a positive to counter that. And then what I found on this recovery is the insanity. I wanted to die. I used my last time on the 26th of May, and I'm on a train coming back to Fresno, and I literally wanted to die. And I remember crying and thinking, like, how can I disappear? Like, just, is there a way to just stay on the train and forever, like go into like nowhere, just like a weird fantasy type setting. And I was crying, and I meant it. Like, I was very sad, it was real. And in that exact moment, I got a message from a fellow person in recovery asking me to go to a picnic. So I immediately stopped crying out of sadness and shame and all the other things that come with addiction. I started crying because I had hope. And I remember calling Sarah immediately, and I said, hey, I just got this message, and I want to go to this picnic. I want to work this program. I'm not done yet. So that was the beginning. And then since then, it magnifies. To remember before I got on that train and left Fresno, I asked for help, and the person was Sarah again, and she said, I am helping you. I'm praying that God puts a man in your life that you trust and that can help you.
Yeah.
So none of that ties together in the moment until you start reflecting. And I'm
Sure.
like, wow. So, and then to fast forward, for myself, I had a conversation with Lewis as well, and there was a lot of insanity that day. I'm gonna run. I'm gonna be an outlaw, man. I'm a fight or flight person. And he looked me in the eyes and he's like, no, like, that's ridiculous. I don't remember exact words that he used, but what he did was.
I think I might have used, you don't knock it the fuck off. Sorry.
And probably so. But I look at that as you gave me direction that day, and I took the direction. So once again, not in that moment, but looking back, I can see where God has put people in my life to tell me what I need to hear in that moment. And I truly believe that. Sarah told me what she needed to tell me. Sal reached out to me at the time he needed to reach out. And Lewis stopped me from making a bad decision that ultimately allowed God to continue working in my life. And I say that because all of the things I was afraid of never came true.
Sure. So what role does spirituality play in your life today?
For me, it's huge. It's I'm connected. It's I pray, I meditate. I get fearful often, and that's when I ask for help from my higher power. I do my best to pull back out of the fear and just trust the process. I pull out gratitude list, be thankful for the things that I have, and reminding myself that it could always be worse, and it was.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I genuinely get I call them God bumps on my arms.
I've seen them.
We do it a lot.
Yeah. It seems like it's always right on time. It's when we're doing the right thing for the right reason. It's when I'm telling the truth. I'm not getting them right now, so be careful.
Popping up on me a little bit over here.
But it's and it's a different place. Like today, I believe if my stomach starts like getting in a knot, something's wrong. And I feel like that's my conscious contact, my spirituality, right?
Like telling you to check yourself?
Yeah,
or check your ways you're thinking?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or caution, like wrong idea, or stay away. It can be other people as well, or situations, right? But when I'm doing something, I get this euphoric feeling that comes over me, and that feeling resonates more from my chest. So I feel like when my thoughts and my heart are aligned, then that's my spirituality. I'm doing the right things.
That resonated to me, Kenny. And, that feeling of the higher power using you, just being in your space or presence or something, it's intoxicating.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm scared to death to fuck it up.
Mm-hmm.
You say that a lot. You say since we started here at Touchstone 3+ years ago, like all the change and the growth and how many people have gotten sober here, and you've said that quite a few times. Like we can't do anything that will affect this momentum. So let's just keep doing the right thing.
That's it. And creating a space where we leave the windows open for that spirit, that higher power to come in and do the work. Because we can't do it. You crazy, you think you can. It's ludicrous to think that we can change people. You've done a hell of a feat if you can change yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
To do someone else, it's just, but that space, creating a space. And I'm scared to death, Nolan, because I've done it so many times before. Like I shared with you, I feel as if I'm on a wave, or something bigger than me is I'm being compelled by my higher power I couldn't do nothing else if I wanted to. I'd fall on my face. I'm being compelled. I'm being compelled, and it feels awesome. And I never want to be out of. I never want to be unconnected. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I never want to disconnect. So I stay on my shit as far as making sure that my actions are a reflection of the purest part of me, the best part of me, especially in our positions, because we have people's lives in our hands, and my decisions really affect people and, their lives. So I take that serious.
It's so hard to find that fine line too. Like, this is a disease, and a relapse shouldn't be punished, and it's so hard to find that line to figure out, okay, what's best for the client based on these facts, and then sometimes that is tough love. Sometimes it's it's out of our hands because people aren't maybe not willing to do what was recommended, and then what do? We can't condone or co-sign it or enable the behavior. So yeah, it gets sticky. But as long, I think you're right. As long as we're coming from the right place, and we give the options, the option that we feel is best for the person, and it's not punitive, which it gets hard. It gets tough.
Someone asked me before, Lewis, how do you know if you're doing the right thing? How do you know when you're doing the right thing? I said, shit, I never know if I'm doing the right thing. But what I do is I give my all. Do you know what I mean? I give my best.
Sure.
Do I know that's the right thing? I don't. But I give my best, and I try to come from the purest part of myself. To think that my decisions are right all the time, that's just ludicrous. I don't think I'm right. I'm not sure if I'm right most of the time, but I will give you my best.
I agree with what you both are saying, and in the big book it talks about being the director of the show. And earlier you're talking about people's journey and impeding upon their journey, and it kind of coincides with what you're discussing now, and knowing if you're doing the right thing by, let's say, discharge them from the program because they cannot stay sober while in the program. Everyone's journey, we're here to assist in the best way that we can possible, but in no way should we impede upon someone's journey. And part of that journey is coming to that realization that I can't, he can, and he will.
And he will, yeah.
Right? So step 1, 2, and 3. And until someone can really grasp those 3 concepts, it's going to be very difficult for them to maintain sobriety.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. So what role does spirituality play in your life today, Brandy? I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, but...
I did, but again, I use prayer probably every time I get in my car still, because that has become my new ritual. I have it on my rear view mirror, and it says, just pray. And so for me, that's my good reminder that I just need to take a moment and pray. And so I do that daily. Also, I would say that spirituality today, I try to practice 1, 2, and 3 on a daily basis. Keeps me not only spiritually fit, but it gets me out of myself, right?
Sure.
I used to think that being healthy encompassed, eating well, exercising, completing my responsibilities, taking care of my emotional, psychological, and physical health, and I failed to really nurture my spiritual health. And I now know that that was a huge component of my life that I was missing, was that spiritual connection and building upon the spiritual health and giving that as much energy as I gave all the other avenues of my life. And today I could say that I do that, and it really has allowed me to flourish in all areas of my life by just giving nurture to that one component.
So Lewis, last question. We're almost out of time, but what role does spirituality play in your life today?
I'm being compelled. As corny as that sounds, I'm being driven by this I can't explain this higher power or my understanding. I can't say, if at one time I believed in, I was parts of different religions and I could name, right? And I can't name it today. It is what drives me, Nolan. It's what guides every decision that I make. I try to let it is the meter on which the yardstick on which I measure myself, my decisions with. Do you understand?
Sure. So you're saying like
It's
your take on what's right and what's wrong, and like the feeling you get when you veer off path.
yes, and so what is it to my recovery? I'm connected. I feel plugged in. If that makes sense, I feel plugged in, and I don't want to get unplugged. So I stay on my shit and try to. Am I perfect? No, by far not. And nor does the higher power that I understand call for that. I'm perfect just the way I am. Do you understand what I mean? Not to a. No, let me take that back. I'm working on being the best version of myself, and I believe that's a lifelong. I believe that's a lifelong work. But Nolan, the simple answer is I feel plugged. I feel connected I feel plugged into my higher power. It drives everything. It drives everything, bro. No bullshit. It drives everything, and I don't want to get unplugged. I'm afraid that my head will get big, and I'll start shaking my ass, and the plug will come out, and then it's back to it's it's back to. I try to stay humble because I've seen it happen to many before in the past too. You start doing good and feeling good, you start shaking that ass, and you unplug yourself, and so
Changing what
it
that
is
is.
everything though.
Yeah.
I feel plugged in to something that I cannot explain or define for you. That's complicated. But I feel plugged in, and I don't want to be unplugged. I believe that if I do unplug, I don't know what'll happen. I don't even want to consider.
Yeah, let's just not get unplugged. We'll be all right.
Stay plugged in.
Okay. Well, thank all three of you for being on this month. Touchstone is a better place because of each of you, and I think like our clients and our coworkers, they're in a better environment because the three of you work here. So I appreciate each of you.
Thank you, bro. We appreciate you too.
Absolutely.
Done.